This week, Don Pezet from itpro.tv will be joining us for our interview section. We're going to turn it into a topic discussion on security for small businesses. A technical segment will be delivered by Moses Hernandez from Cisco/SANS on finding node.js. In the security news this week, we've got ICS SCADA penetration testing, OAuth nightmares. Just who are the shadow brokers? Patches for the Linux sudo vulnerability. One login has suffered a massive, very devastating breach. Cisco and Netgear have some patches available for us. Let's see. Jeff wants to talk about the Chipotle breach. Joff also had one login in his stories as well as patriotic Russian hackers. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Brought to you by the SANS Institute, the most trusted source for computer security certification training and research. Visit sans.org to explore their full curriculum and latest training offerings. Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. And improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial today by visiting Tenable.io. Onapsis is the leading provider of solutions to protect ERP systems from cyber attacks. Customers can secure their SAP and Oracle business-critical platforms from espionage, sabotage, and financial fraud risks. Visit them on the web at onapsis.com.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you our host. He's never afraid to ask the question, no matter how much you think it'll make a stink. Paul Asadorian!
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is, in fact, episode 516. It is June 1st, 2017, and I am excited to be here, as always. I have a lot of things that I want to share that have happened recently. Before I do any of that, we've got a fantastic show in here to help us with that. Of course, it's Mr. Larry Pesce here in studio. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
I need this keyboard. Just pay no attention to the keyboard. Sorry. Go ahead.
Some interesting stuff, unless, crazy life things happen to get in the way, but they hopefully shouldn't. My understanding is that I may actually be here pretty much on the show through the remainder of summer.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
nice.
In the studio every week.
Nice. So you're not doing Sansfire?
Nope. DEF CON.
Wow.
I opted to not do Sansfire for DEF CON, and there may have been some DEF CON cancellation for me, but we'll see. You'll know some more in a couple of days and a couple of weeks.
Very interesting.
I'll fill you in on that after the show. Remind me to fill you in on that after the show.
Alrighty then. So. On the lines via Skype, Mr. Joff Thayer is here with us. Joff, welcome.
G'day, Paul. It's good to be here again. And on that Australian note, unlike Larry, I'm going to be teaching in Canberra, Australia, in July. Ooh. So I will be taking a departure from the US and enjoying a little bit of the homeland and teaching while I'm there. So
well, it's good, Joff, because you speak Australian. So, I mean, it's,
I think I speak Australian. I don't know. When I get there, I think my fellow Australians will probably say that I don't speak Australian anymore. But, that's the penalty that you get for being international.
Our special guest this evening is Don Pezet from itpro.tv. Don, welcome to the show. You're making the rounds on all the shows. It's wonderful to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I think I just have to hit my secure digital life, and I'll have all the shows done.
There you go. There you go.
Nice.
You'll be right up there with Doug White, who's the only other one that's done every show. They won't let me on SDL. I don't know why. Well, not that they won't let me. We just haven't done it yet. But
You need to do like Saturday Night Live and give me a special smoking jacket.
That's
you
right.
know,
nice. I like that. It's an excuse for me to buy a smoking jacket. Fellow cigar lover,
like you needed an excuse.
fellow cigar lover, Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us tonight as well. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good to be back. Hey, I want to take a quick minute to get caught up on some shout-outs. I haven't been on for a while, and I didn't get a chance to do this last week, but shout out to B-Sides Boston, where I spoke there whenever it was, a month and a half or so ago.
Yeah, it's a nice fleece. My wife actually was wearing it. She's like, "This is really nice. You're gonna print some Security Weekly fleeces." I'm like,
and it's been cold,
June, but
so it's coming in handy.
That's
I mean,
good.
it was warm today, and then after that, I went to B-Sides Nashville. Always a great B-Sides. I was there with Jack Daniel. We had
Is that a
great
T-shirt
time.
or a T-shirt or a fleece?
That's a T-shirt.
A T-shirt. Gotcha.
And my grandson came early, so I was able to crash B-Sides Charm, Baltimore, and I promised I would give a shout out to them. Met a bunch of new people there, had a great time.
I love that how Jeff's doing this is via the T-shirt.
It's awesome. It's wonderful.
Isn't this cool? And then I went to ThoughtCon and spoke there, and I told the story that I said I'd never tell on camera. So there was a couple hundred people that got to hear my NSA story.
Nice.
So that was kind of fun.
Which
they
wasn't-
also
which
gave
wasn't
me a hoodie,
recorded,
but I'm
right?
showing the T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there I went on to NOLACon.
Oh,
Also
yeah.
got
How
a
was
hoodie,
NOLACon?
even though It was kind of warm.
What's his name? They're a very nice couple that runs NOLACon, or at least did when I went there.
Yeah, and they have an awesome speaker dinner where they cook Cajun food from scratch for us. It's awesome.
Very, very
They
nice
also the badge for NOLACon was a bottle opener. Which
Oh,
is
I like it. I like
came
it.
in handy. And then this weekend I'm heading up to Chicago. I'm keynoting Hack for Kids up there, and we're going to learn how to use this thing, the Visionaire wheel, which
Nice.
is how you encrypt using a one-time pad, which is the only truly secure form of secure communication in the world.
I love it. I love it.
Take it away,
You've made
Paul.
the rounds, Jeff. It's fantastic. A couple of announcements. ITPro.tv's courses now include, and this has been updated recently, Computer Hacking Forensic Investigator V9, Kali Linux, CompTIA A+ 901, and Accelerated CompTIA Security Plus. Premium annual memberships include all video content as well as access to virtual labs and Q&A forums. You'd pay $85.70 a month or $857 per year, but we've got a special offer for our listeners and viewers. For a limited time, get 30% off a monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. Now, Jeff, you talked about B-Sides. There is, in fact, a B-Sides Kampala, which I had a great pre-canned speech about that's not in the teleprompter. In any case, B-Sides Kampala will be held in Uganda in October. I want to say it's the 14th and 15th of October. It is bsideskampala.com. Their call for presentations ends on July 15th, 2017. You can submit through their website. They're looking for talks on a varying number of topics, including robotics. And I'm told there's bonus points if you bring in your own robot, which could be interested getting into.
Not that you can
that
bring
country.
it back, but yeah, maybe.
Oh, bringing it back might be.
You'd have to check it, right?
You definitely have to check it. Yes. I don't think they allow robots.
At which point your robot will get completely crushed.
Yeah, so
and
you got to
that
check
will
it
be
so
the
they
end
can.
of it.
You got to check it so they can wreck it.
Check it so they can wreck it. That's
Chickadee,
right.
check yourself
that's
before you
That
wreck
sounds
yourself.
like a T-shirt, all you listeners out there.
It does. It totally does.
So I'll try and segue into our topic. I wanted to make a quick announcement about the Security Weekly websites. We have securityweekly.com and wiki.securityweekly.com. They're both actually SSL now.
Yay!
Like both all the time for the first time in history.
Hey,
Like,
welcome to the 21st century.
we don't really store any data on there. Like we don't store listener data on there. It's not like we're doing e-commerce transactions.
Right. Any of the forms you're submitting are searches in the wiki.
Yeah, and now really three reasons. So one, it does have our accounts that we use to access the site.
Sure.
So those should have been protected with SSL for whatever protection that gives you, right? Also, a lot of people were asking, hey, why doesn't SSL work on your site, like your security podcast? I'm like, okay, I get that.
No.
But the real driving factor is it helps your SEO. So I was like,
Wow.
well, that was just like the icing on the cake. I'm like, yep, bit the bullet. Did that. We upgraded them. There's still some upgrading that needs to be done, but a lot of the heavy lifting was done. We converted from Apache to Nginx, which was an experience in and of itself. If you want to hear more on that, send us some feedback. If people want to hear about it, I will talk about it, put together a segment. I'm still working on some further security configurations, which are very interesting. Researching the configuration, Nginx is very finicky, as is JavaScript.
As is Apache.
Yeah, as is Apache. You could say the same for
Yeah.
Apache. It's just a finicky beast, but it's very powerful. I really like doing the Nginx thing, and it's almost like a little bit of coding you have to do in the config, which is nice for our particular setup. And researching all of these options individually, implementing them in a development environment, pushing that out to production. I was having fun. But now we get to our topic that we're going to talk about today, about security for SMBs. Largely, if an SMB needs a website or WordPress or a MediaWiki instance, they're going to go to the cloud and get whatever's available out there. And who knows what level of scrutiny or bells and whistles are being put on that particular website. So, Donna, if you want to kind of segue into some of the challenges that you see with security for small businesses or even the mid-market, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, you really you hit the nail on the head, because if you're a small business or a medium business, you're not going to have a big dev team. You may not even have a single developer at all, and you definitely don't have a CISO and that kind of infrastructure in place. So when they need something like a website, it's WordPress that powers something like 40% of the internet these days, a huge amount, and WordPress is not a well, I don't want to say that it's not secure. It's just that it's not developed with security in mind, and it's a huge target. So it's constantly being attacked. And for a small business, it's a trade-off they make. They say, here, I can get this nice packaged software for free. I can be up and running and have some shopping cart leveraged in on it. And then they end up being vulnerable to exploits. They end up being vulnerable to all sorts of different things that can occur.
Well, yeah, and the attack surface, Don, and like you said, the barrier to entry is really low. It's a lot of functionality, but that comes with the baggage of a really large attack surface. Mm-hmm. So there's the web server component, there's the PHP backend, there's WordPress itself, there's the plugins, and don't forget, there's also the themes and things that can be abused with JavaScript and CSS inside of the site. There's the authentication issues as well.
Yep, and the big ones that I see is that as far as any of the deployment of WordPress stuff, WordPress has seen a decent amount of issues, and they've got better at doing that.
They have gotten better. They have auto updates.
But the themes and the plugins can be written by any Joe Schmo and have no anything to do with any potential security testing. And for me, the plugins and the themes are where the issue really comes.
MediaWiki has the same issue too.
Yeah.
They at least give you a warning and say this add-on is extension rather in MediaWiki.
Right.
They're like, this doesn't have security.
This isn't ours. We have no idea.
Right.
And this would apply to Joomla or Drupal, other platforms like that too. And the carousel plugin. Well, even inside a theme, a lot of them will include a carousel function to scroll pictures across, and those are always targeted and they're never updated. And that's a big challenge that we see. And it's just one of the many things that small businesses are confronted with, that they've got to try and deal with that. Like they didn't have the team to write the software in the first place. They definitely don't have the team to make sure that it's maintained. And so they're trusting cloud providers. And a lot of times that trust is a bit misplaced. Like, for example, DigitalOcean, right? I know I can go to DigitalOcean right now and I can deploy a WordPress server, and they will deploy it according to standard best practices within minutes. But then the moment I get in there and start messing with it, it's no longer best practices, right? Now, I can make it as unsecure as I want. And if I don't know what I'm doing, that's going to happen, right? So that happens to the small businesses. And there's no support kind of network for them. There's no real mechanism that's in place. And when you go to a conference like RSA, right? It's packed full of vendors, and you look at the solutions, those solutions are not designed for small and medium businesses. They're very expensive, or they have a high technical barrier of entry, and they're kind of just left in the dark, right?
Well, and their other option, and we've done this not with much success, is to get some help. from a contractor to help you with your website, right? Like I think there's the smaller businesses that are just like, yeah, I'm going to use whatever's out there. I think as their business grows, they kind of reach this like second tier where they're like, I don't have the expertise in house, or even if I do, they're busy with other things. They're probably doing some IT and some customer facing stuff. And so we need to go hire a consultant. Now, having been down this path, I'm less than impressed with the consultants that do WordPress. And the problem is there's so many to choose from. There are some that are very helpful and really want your business, but it feels shady to me. Like they're just going to charge me a lot of money for doing something pretty simple. And then you have to manage that consultant. And if you don't have the knowledge, you're in even worse of a position. I at least understand how some of WordPress works and can review stuff. But I think that's not a good situation to be in for a small business.
Are you familiar with the company Securi?
Yes, I have heard of them.
So they have a neat approach, I think, which is they just say, you know what, screw it. WordPress is going to have vulnerabilities. It's going to get out of date on our customer site. So instead, they do a web application firewall. They say, look, you're going to route all your traffic through us, and we'll filter the attacks in line before they even get to the server. It's a nice approach, and it's not terribly expensive, and it gives you that extra level. But if somebody manages to get through that, and you've got a non-updated server behind the scenes, then you've got problems there. And
right.
We're just talking cloud, right? What about all the on-premises stuff? You see that a lot, where many small businesses will run their own servers because they don't want to do a cloud bill that they just can't anticipate what the cost is going to be. Yep. And so now they're trying to maintain Linux servers or other infrastructure that they're just not properly maintaining, and they end up worse off.
Yeah, and it's not a small task to maintain even a handful of systems like we do here. I mean, that's part of how I stay up to date is I maintain all of our own systems. Sometimes not all that well. I'm not asking to hack our website. Please do not hack our website. If you find something, please tell me, and we'll bring you on the show and we can talk about it. It'll be fun. But it's not easy maintaining all of these systems, certainly, and there's a lot of not just the complexity to get them up and running, installed, configured, and then secured as another piece, but the dependencies are just all over the map. You talked about the security service down. There's also WordFence. There's a lot of skill, even though they tout all these things as being easy. Like there's a lot of skill to understand, well, when I put this security control in place, like this stuff breaks. And then why does it break?
Yep.
Sometimes it's, an hour or more of investigation. I mean, I did that on our own side. I'm like, oh, that plugin's deactivated. I'm like, so in dev, I'm going to, disable it. And then, delete it. I'm going to delete it. And I deleted it, and our page didn't load. I'm like, oh,
well then.
That's kind of interesting. I'm like, now that I've got it in on a dev server, I'm like, okay. And it turns out just like one line of PHP that was referencing that plugin that when it wasn't there basically causes the entire site not to load.
Yeah.
So now I've been managing, WordPress and other things for a long. I mean, I was a systems administrator, so I should know how to fix that stuff probably in less time than it took me. But to have that skill, not everyone has that, the skills and experience to troubleshoot that.
And the sad part is that I remember the decision to move to WordPress. Was because there was so much more support available for it than the
functionality
because of the previous platform was movable type.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Fortunately, we never did Drupal or Joomla.
But you talk about having the barrier to entry for doing some security stuff at WordPress.
Right.
Movable type, the barrier was potentially insurmountable.
Yeah.
It was awful, and then especially for someone in the small business community.
And the problem you run into too is small businesses that have been in business for a while.
Yes.
Like we were on movable type when we moved to WordPress. I can't tell you the challenges that we've had to overcome to maintain our site and make it continue to work when you've gone through those migrations of different versions of movable type and then moved it over to WordPress. Like the redirect scripts, it's like it was a coding project for me to get all of that stuff working. And I think it's all. I think we're without that many 404s now. I think.
And it's not all gloom and doom. There is something that can be done there. The challenge is that there's so many software packages out there that present themselves as being free. that,
Yep.
hey, WordPress is free, Drupal is free, Joomla is free. You can get these, and there's these shopping cart systems that are only $20 a month, or we'll just charge you 3% on the credit card transaction. Everything else is free. And small businesses jump on that, and I think we need to do a better job educating small and medium businesses and say, look, nothing is free, and that there is this kind of run cost that you need to be factoring in, and you need to be having external auditors. You need to have your systems being examined by an independent third party, and it is going to cost you money, and it might cost you a lot of money. You might need to do an audit at $10,000 every quarter or something like that. And that's a huge amount of money. But if you're running a business, that isn't that much amount of money. If you look at your total revenues, that's an expense that they need to start taking into account. But you don't see that when you go to WordPress.org. They don't say, hey, when you deploy our software, by the way, you need to be
you need
doing all this extra stuff.
Well,
by the way, this requires care and feeding, just like a pet.
Right. And the other thing, too, and I think people are in small business are probably attracted to Squarespace and Wix, and I've had my experiences with those sites. And I think the cautionary thing is not so much a security issue. It's as you progress, you might want more functionality and control over your website, and that just doesn't exist on those platforms, and you're stuck with whatever they're providing.
Yep.
If you want to do something different, then you have to move, and the cost of moving, as I've discovered, is quite high, right? And that's can continue to be a cost because you've had to move platforms. I hate moving.
Well, I'm glad
platforms.
we finally brought up the money issue, because I think that's overarching what the issue is here.
Money.
All the vendors at RSA, they don't want to deal with the little guys because there's no money in it. They're always looking for the whales. And to be honest, if you're a small merchant or a small company, I kind of understand their point of view that they want to go out and buy a product that they know works and that they know is relatively secure when they start to use it, because more times than not, whoever's selling it to them has claimed that it's secure or passes whatever compliance standard. And we're not going to get through this conversation without bringing up PCI, because a lot of these small companies that we're talking about are merchants that are trying to do business. So, somewhere along, and I agree, I don't think the money thing is ever talked about sufficiently, because you've got vendors that are selling solutions or ignoring you, and you've got companies that are not properly educated on, like what we've been talking about, sort of the cost of doing business on the internet, the cost of doing business with the modern technology, and doing
Jeff, if I use PayPal or if I use Square, I'm fine, right? I don't have to be PCI compliant.
Totally. You've shifted that blame to someone else. Oh wait.
Wait. Read the small print.
Well, the other thing too, and I think from a retail perspective, and I think the story that sparked this was something about. Not leaving the companies behind, but also with respects to Windows XP and that kind of stuff. A lot of retailers I get very concerned about, especially when we talk about WannaCry and all the ransomware, is if your point of sale registers are ransomware, like you're in deep trouble. And I feel like they're kind of positioned right now in a bad spot for that, because there is very little that's being done, I think, in that.
Hey, look on the bright side. It might be what finally drives them to update their point of sale.
Could be. But how many?
At the same time, the ones that are actively seeking a solution, right? So, all right, hey, maybe we've deployed McAfee antivirus on all of our machines. We want something better, right? So they go to a conference and they go and they do the demos, and they go somewhere like Cylance, right? I think Cylance, I think they start their quotes at something like 500 licenses, or may even be as low as 100, but it's not 10, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. So the new cutting edge stuff, it's like you guys said, they're looking for the whales. They're looking for those big enterprise and government contracts. So what the lower, the smaller and medium businesses are left with is practically consumer grade security, and it's just not at the level that they need. And so they're going to get things like ransomware. And are they even backing their data up? Are the backups? We've all heard this, where somebody gets ransomware and their backups got encrypted as well, because they kept it online. So just standard, simple practices that, to back Jeff up, if they followed the PCI compliance manual and did all that, they'd be fine. But these companies aren't doing it. So it boils back down to education and investment.
Is this where? Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, to rebut what you said earlier, I mean, one of the reasons why a lot of small companies don't try to follow the standard is because they've had some vendor come in and say, use our product and you don't have to worry about being PCI compliant. We've got you covered. And while I think in some ways that's legitimate, in a lot of ways, I think that's almost criminal that vendors are allowed to say that without properly educating their buying public as to what the small print says. But that's a buyer beware type of thing.
But what if, in using the retail and point of sale as an example, what if it's essentially in the cloud, right? The application I'm using requires a web browser. Now, of course, there's issues. If I lose internet, I can't process transactions. Maybe there's contingencies for that. But how much does that help? Does that hurt? Does it just change the problem?
It can help. For example, if you're using something like Dropbox storage, right, and you get ransomware, if you paid the extra $40 for file versioning, then you can roll back to a previous version and just unencrypted your files, right? So that's nice. But systems like Google Drive, they don't do file versioning by default, or at least I don't think they do. So we don't have that way to roll back. So sometimes you have the features that protect you, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have to pay a little extra to get it. But the cloud's not perfect either, right? Wasn't it? It was 2 or 3 weeks ago that Google had the big Google Doc with a macro exploit that was going around, and that's cloud software right there, and you can get compromised the same way.
Mm. Jeff, you were saying?
I was going to say you're sort of mixing apples and oranges a little bit. I mean, there are point of sale systems that are served on web apps, and those web apps could be cloud-based, but even then those solutions are relatively new, and small merchants are still faced with this issue of going out and having to rip out whatever they've been using and put in something new. And somebody's selling them the web-based, cloud-based solution. Somebody else is selling them, an alternative form of payment like a Square. Or it could be a Google Pay or an Apple Pay. I mean, they're being bombarded with all these solutions, and everybody's saying use our stuff, and you don't have to worry about PCI. And what they're essentially saying is you don't have to worry about security. And time again, that's being proven to be wrong.
Mm. Yeah, because there's still the security of the actual end station itself, right? I mean, you still have the system. It's just the system's on someone else's computer and not your computer.
Right.
That doesn't absolve you from actually trying to secure your systems. Stuff can still get on there.
Because technically it's your system. It's just somewhere else.
Yeah, it potentially steal your credentials to your cloud-based point-of-sale system and do the exact same thing as if you had it locally, right?
Well, I think the biggest misunderstanding is what vendors sometimes say more explicitly or less explicitly, and what the retail merchants want to hear is if you install X, pick a product, PCI goes away. What they're really saying is your responsibility for the compliance and meeting the requirements largely goes away. We cover that for you, or we alleviate you from having to do a lot of those things. What is not done in most cases is removing the liability or the potential liability if there is a breach. That still squarely falls on the merchant, whoever they are. And that's probably the biggest misunderstanding of all the ads that are out there. Walk RSA, walk Black Hat, and you'll see companies saying, we'll make your PCI pain go away. We'll take care of your PCI burden. And my attitude is, if you view security as a burden and as a nuisance, you kind of already lost the battle.
Right.
That goes back to education and awareness, which I think is the only thing that really starts to make a difference for the small merchants. They gotta know that they got to get into the security game. Yes, it's going to be at a different level. Yes, they have limited budgets perhaps, but they've got to do something. And I think the industry owes everybody to offer them something that is something that they can use.
Yeah, and the reality is, even when things are going well, most small businesses fail, right? They've got enough against them just in the regular business market. So if they get a database compromise where their user data gets out there, that will sink them. So it's one more obstacle to new businesses that are picking up. So they've got to be aware. They've got to work towards it. But it would be nice to see the security vendors take a little more active role in some of this, to be able to better increase people's awareness, let them know, make tools available to them. I think Square does a really good job with their iPad registers, where like everything is kind of self-contained and managed in a way that's all a walled garden. The customer can't really break it. But even that's not perfect. There's systems like AWS that Amazon does a great job with their systems. They say right on the website, hey, we are PCI compliant. But at the end of the day, yes, they're PCI compliant. But once you start putting your data on there, you're not necessarily PCI compliant anymore. So they don't necessarily come right out and push that on you either. So these big businesses, they could be taking a more active role in that to help support the smaller businesses that are out there. I just don't see that happening.
To your first point, I can tell you I was at a one of these new brewery places that have a bar. They've become popular in our area. So they were brand new. That only opened in the last month or two before I was there, and they were using Square. And I'm sitting at the bar, and the Square device was, behind the bartender on the counter that's sort of on the back end. And he took my credit card to run a tab amongst, as well as, 5 or 6 other people. And he was taking our credit cards, and he was lining them up on the back wall, facing us, facing the customers. And I'm like, can I talk to you a minute? And we had a little bit of a discussion about, I could take a picture of all those cards right now, and especially if it's American Express, I've got everything I need to go out and commit fraud.
Yeah,
because the security code's printed on the front of an Amex card. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, that's probably a bad idea. I should probably flip them over. I'm like, well, not so quick, not so fast.
Because now I can take a picture of the back and get the security code and the number that's imprinted in the card.
But they had gone out, and I'm pretty sure it was Square. And they're like, oh, yeah, the guys gave us Square, and they said we don't have to worry about PCI. And I'm like, yeah, and you could still get popped, and it's a small number, but it's still going to be painful to you as a startup business if even just a few dozen of your patrons are victims of fraud, and it does come back to hurt you, and there are fines involved. And Square wouldn't cover that, but they don't have to worry about reading the standard and reading about basics, kind of security awareness, physical security, protecting the cards, even the physical portion of it. Because if somebody tells you don't have to worry about it, you're going to stop reading. Right?
Right.
That's right.
And Don, you may have some insight into this. I think it was you that mentioned backups and how important they are for the small business. I feel like that's a very consumable problem, right? To have backups for a smaller business. I remember when I did IT for a smaller business, I had tapes, and I used to have to go around and feed tapes in, and that was our backup system. If something needed to be restored, it took a long time compared to today's standards. It took a really long time, and that's if the data was read properly from tape. But there's a lot better solutions out there. Are people just not using them? Do they not realize it? Are they too expensive? What's the deal with backups?
I think people just don't use them. You see things like Apple, right, or Macs, where they have Time Machine. Time Machine's super easy to configure and turn on, and now your system's backing up. But the backup is live. It's hooked up to your computer, so it can get encrypted just like your computer can. But for a small business, the solutions are so much easier today. The Dropbox, Crash Plan, Azure Cloud Backup, any of those solutions that are out there where you install them and they just run in the background. And they're doing encrypted backups that are being sent, encrypted over the network, stored at an offsite location in somebody else's cloud. We didn't have that back in the day. If you wanted it off-site, somebody had to take it home, and that was a whole security risk in and of itself.
Oh, there was what was the Iron Mountain?
Yep.
Was the Iron Mountain trucks used to drive around?
Yep. So when I worked at the healthcare organization, it was kind of hilarious. They used Iron Mountain, and all the tapes went off-site, and then I moved out into the country here in Rhode Island, and between my mom's house and our house, which is less than 2 miles away, is the Iron Mountain facility where all our tapes went. Mm-hmm. So if there was an emergency, guess who was sent to go get the tapes?
Yep.
This guy, because I knew where it was. It was less than a mile from the house, and it was potentially on my way into the office or on the way home.
There you go.
And it's stopping off at that warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
Go find your tapes.
Yeah, fortunately, though, they had a system to do that for us.
They do have a system.
But after they found that out, they're like, oh, well, shit, Larry, you're on the authorized list to go pick up tapes in person now. Like, damn it.
I got to tell you, though, I used to visit a lot of those types of facilities, Iron Mountain and others, and had to review a lot of the handling procedures for backup tapes. But that faded away. I haven't done PCI actively in almost 4 years, and probably the last.
And you're a better man for
years, it. And I am a better man for it. But the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years of doing PCI, so I'm going back to late aughts, 2010ish. I mean, there weren't as well, and I worked mostly with the big merchants, but there weren't a lot of people that were still using backup tapes. There were some, but most people were using online systems, virtualized systems.
And those systems are pretty plentiful now for small businesses. So I think that goes back to Jeff's point of education.
Yeah, I think that would be if that's the best protection against something like WannaCry, then that's certainly got to be a highly commoditized, pretty affordable solution.
Well,
you just got to teach people how to do it, use it.
Even broader than that, I think one of the best things a small business can do is invest in a decent cloud backup strategy now, because it's like almost a no-brainer. It's such great service compared to what that just didn't exist before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that and it's not just protection from evil attackers; it's protection from well-intentioned systems administrators that may mess something up.
Yep.
Because we've all been there.
Well-intentioned employees and customers.
Yes.
Yeah.
What other solutions are some of the more easy wins for small businesses? I mean, Don was talking about endpoint protection. Like, dare we go down that route?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Well, we can go down, but if we're talking point of sale, most of them don't have them installed.
And is that because they're concerned about availability?
Traditionally, it was just a technical concern about pushing signatures out to hundreds, if not thousands, of remote locations, which are sort of remote endpoints on a traditional network. Mm-hmm. Now, as more retailers are pushing their internet connectivity to more cloud-based solutions, it may become more feasible. But traditionally, these are the things that aren't on a point of sale that are supposed to be from a PCI perspective. Regular patching, some sort of endpoint protection, antivirus, anti-malware, the ability to have it scanned on a from an internal perspective on a regular basis with a quarterly clean report, some sort of file integrity monitoring, and usually the logs are not enabled, so they're not capturing logs. So those are the 5 things that were extremely common not being done on point of sale. Now let's have the conversation.
I think there's other technologies that used to be out of the reach of small businesses that are, I think, now in the reach. For example, network intrusion detection, right? So host-based intrusion detection we've had in one form or another for a long time, and it was affordable. But network intrusion detection, that was always really expensive. But now even the cheapest Cisco ASA has firepower support. So it's got snort and a custom rule set and all that mess built into it. So they're not perfect by any means, but they're easy to deploy, and they're subscription based, so you pay out a certain fee for a period of time, and you at least get that extra level of protection there as the data is moving in and out of your network. That used to be out of reach. Those things are now, I think, more plentifully available.
What about the ability to re-image a system? And I think it was, I think his name was Greg. He was the CISO for Advanced Auto Parts. We had him on the show. I want to say he was the one that was kind of promoting, like, basically we take an image of all our point-of-sale systems. If something bad happens, we just revert to a previous snapshot. I mean, it's almost like having a virtual machine on every system and just reverting to a snapshot. Is that? I don't hear about that technology or get asked questions about that technology.
What was some of the stuff that I used to see that was like deep freeze or something like that?
They used to use it when I was at the university. Joff, I'm sure you must remember this too, was that they'd have a standard image.
Yeah, it was almost a hardware. It was a hardware lock, actually, if I seem to remember, that was associated with it as well.
Yeah, like in the labs, like public computers, like when you're done using it and you log out, basically everything gets wiped, and every night everything resets to the image.
Yep.
You still see a bit of that. Altiris is still out there and some of the other bigger products. The thing is, in the corporate world, in small business world, medium business, whatever, it's a little different than a school. In a school, you want to clean and erase a machine every single day.
Yeah.
In a corporate world, we don't necessarily want to do that. But if something goes wrong with it, you do want to be able to get back to where you were. And I think thanks to a lot of cloud technologies and most of our stuff being web-based, if something goes wrong, screw it. You just format the machine and that's it. We don't necessarily need a frequently updated image to be able to support that. I know here, I'll use IT Pro TV as an example. We don't back up workstations here at all. None of our laptops, none of our desktops get backed up. And if something happens, they just get wiped out because all of our data is stored server side or in the cloud. And so there's not really a need to back up those workstations.
Yeah, I noticed it with my Chromebook because I decided I wanted to flip it into developer mode.
Yep.
In order to do that, it does a system reset.
Yep. So you lose all your shit.
Yeah. But it's a Chromebook, and so I log in with my Google account, and all my stuff is still there.
Yeah.
You're basically using Chrome as your OS, essentially. Yep. I mean, there isn't a Linux OS underneath it, but all of my stuff is in Chrome. And I protect my Chrome settings and bookmarks and data with a password. Does that, now I didn't look into it as much as I should have. Does that encrypt your settings, or does it just make you give an additional password to access it?
To access it locally, to my understanding, to access it locally, someone's probably screaming at the radio right now, or their radio listening to this, or their headphones now listening to this, or screaming at their TV. But if you enable sharing of that data through Chrome, through Google, through multiple apps.
Yes.
And here's where it almost got to bite me not too long ago. What was it? We talked about VLC player.
The subtitles?
No, a different one.
Oh.
I'm sorry, not VLC, Handbrake.
Yeah.
Handbrake got their repository popped.
Yes.
Their remote one got popped, but their local didn't. And the remote had some malware included in it. So when you downloaded it for the Mac, it compromised your Mac, even though Macs don't get viruses because they're invincible. If you had, and it grabbed all of your stuff from Chrome, and if you sync Chrome between multiple computers through Google, that stuff from this computer would end up on that other computer that had the vulnerable version of Handbrake and have all of your passwords for all the websites that you access.
Interesting.
And
so
the
password store is...
And the reason I know this is because I built a new machine to do Handbrake at home, and that's all it does. It does Handbrake and DVDs and stuff. And I just built it. And I installed Handbrake the weekend that it got compromised. And I had a 50-50 shot whether I was going to get popped or not. And I didn't know it at the time until after everything. And it was a 50-50 shot, and I was the unlucky 50%. But I installed Chrome as the default browser, and I had not logged in as my Google account.
I gotcha.
So none of that stuff went over.
Right.
But you know what
See,
I did?
I put a passphrase. You can put a passphrase on that data. So when you...
It's easily broken.
It is. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't... I didn't look into the protection. I enabled it, and I'm like, I wonder how much protection this is giving.
So, and I know it's easily broken because I know this because I went to my other computer because just out of good procedure, this machine got popped that had Chrome on it that could have. It's Google, who knows. So I went back to the one, and I'm like, well, shit, I've got this list of stuff. I want a list that I can print out and I can cross off when I've changed the damn passwords. How do I get that? Oh, it's encrypted. Oh, there's a tool in Python that decrypts it for you. Okay, done. Here's my list. Done. Off we go.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a 30-second process.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, so no
But
protection.
I would still say, put the password on there because that was 30 seconds that I had to go through, and someone that is of less caliber and doesn't want to go through that effort won't.
I'm wondering now, I'm going to research it if there's settings, because if you have a G Suite account, you get complete control over every user's Google settings, and you can exercise as little or as much control. And I've spent sometimes like over an hour, couple of hours, like going through the settings and researching things, and it's not very well. I mean, it is documented, but it's not very well like publicized, like all the stuff that you can actually do with it.
Yep.
There's a lot of Google searches.
Yeah. Well, you have to
all.
know what you need to Google for. And at that point, for the small business person, we're keep this small business focused type deal. You're talking about having someone that you're doing your sysadmin. It's just someone else's computer. Again.
Yeah.
You're
Well, and that's a good point because for small business,
what Larry was saying,
go ahead, Don.
Anytime you have services that synchronize, across a cloud service like that, you've got a risk. And I'll use Dropbox as the example, and kind of just like Larry said, if you have 20 computers that are using a central Dropbox for Business account, and one of them gets hit with ransomware and encrypts all the files, they're going to sync the encrypted version of those files
Right.
up to the cloud service, and that's going to sync back down to everybody else. So everybody just got encrypted data, even though they're not infected.
Especially with something like that, where the new file gets encrypted, it's an update, so it gets synced to Dropbox, which now needs to be synced to everybody else because it's new.
Cascading effect.
And with Dropbox, when you sign up for them, it's like, I don't know, $100 a year for a terabyte of storage. And there's an option that they don't necessarily show right away that for another $40, you get file versioning. So you can do a rollback, right? But if you didn't pay the $40, then you don't have that available. And it's only $40. It's a no-brainer. I tell people about this all the time. Like, you need to do that. It's only $40. Think of the price of one Bitcoin.
Oh, God, especially now.
Oh, and I'm
Man,
wondering if G Suite has similar options. Again, it's like a whole journey in and of itself.
Yep.
Researching.
Here
I can see
you are being a
business-
sysadmin.
Well, and I can see
Hey,
small
Paul.
businesses not doing that, right? In doing the due diligence, I can see a good business opportunity for someone to say, hey, we can really help you, not just with the security aspect, but we can help you manage your G Suite because there's so much options, Jeff.
Yep. Jeff.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to something that Don said a while ago, just to make sure that I had the proper clarification. We were talking about the point of sale and the lack of a lot of basic protections that PCI requires, and he brought up the idea of network-based intrusion detection, which is fine. There's a twist to PCI that says you can't use what you're doing to meet a PCI, an existing PCI requirement to satisfy another PCI requirement as a compensating control. And intrusion detection is something that's already required. So while that's a good idea to do, it's not going to solve the problem from a compliance perspective anyway of nothing's being done on the point of sale. What has been done, what is much more common, is there's various whitelisting solutions that have been put out there that ostensibly are better than or provide a similar protection to what the things that they're not doing on the point of sale are supposed to protect against. So I just wanted to add that clarification.
Anything else on small business security or lack thereof?
Where can they get good, cheap training?
Yeah, there you go. That's a great segue, Jeff.
And I do have two questions for Don, unrelated, but afterwards. So at the end,
That's right. Ready?
end
Hit-
of
hit the-
where
the ready,
where
set,
can you
go.
get good, awesome training?
Well, there's a lot of resources that are out there, many that are really great.
But we want the best, Don. We want the best. Where can we get the best?
Well, you've got to make sure that you're getting the training that's right for the audience. So when you're talking about a small business owner, they don't necessarily need a pen testing course, right? So they need general awareness. And there's companies like ours, like IT Pro TV, where we've got training that's built around that for the CEO or somebody of that role that just needs to understand what their responsibility is. And then you need to designate at least one person to be responsible for IT security in your organization, even if they're not officially a CISO or whatever. And they're the ones that need to go much further than that. You've got basics like Security Plus, but then you've got the more advanced things. But more importantly, I think, than training, and I know I'm not supposed to say this stuff because that's my business, but more importantly than training, I think you just need to stay aware, right? You need to be hitting websites like Threat Post and podcasts like Security Weekly, where you can just kind of keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on out there and just be aware. Too many people are oblivious to what's going on, and then all of a sudden they get blindsided. There's plenty of people out there right now that don't know what ransomware is, and that is reckless. So
They should watch Secure Digital Life.
Yes.
So you had questions for Don.
So Don, I'm a guy that likes to look into the background a little bit. We've done some research on metadata, and I've been looking behind you at some set dressing at the awesome IT Pro TV studios, and I had two questions. Over your left shoulder, there's a photograph next to the little
Qbert?
green man.
Is that Qbert?
It's not Qbert.
Oh.
Yes, there's a
That's
photograph.
whoop.
Whoop,
Oh.
down to your left.
There it is.
To your
Yeah.
left. Yeah, that one.
Ooh.
So that is
Okay, all right. I see the other reference, and
From a distance, it looked like he had an afro.
so there's Quark, and who is the other gentleman sitting next to him?
That's Cardassian.
Yes.
What's his
That's,
name again?
Garrick.
Quark.
It's Quark on the right, and the Cardassian's name is
Garrick.
excellent.
That's right. Totally Deep Space Nine reference.
And and that was
Not to
actually
be
signed by
confused with
Andrew Robinson.
Kardashians.
That's it.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff.
So seeing that out of context was very difficult for me to pick up who that was. The other question that I've got, so over basically right behind your head, is there anything better than Johnny Walker back there?
Oh yeah, he's got quite. Those are now. See, I've been to Don's office, and that was my first question. I'm like, those, dude. Like, are those full? Well, no,
No,
wait,
not
no,
really.
they're empty. Never mind.
Yeah, well, see, that's the good thing. But
Drank them all
no, okay,
in one
okay.
sitting. The legend goes
Wow.
that he drank them all in one
Wow.
sitting and lived to tell.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I, mean,
'Cause-
I have
Every one of
a,
those
I have a
officially
related
emptied by me.
question, and that is over your right shoulder. That rack of things that look like servers, is that real servers or is it fake?
So they were real servers. They are now fake.
Okay.
well, they are real servers. They're just
They're
not doing anything
decommissioned.
important.
That's right.
That's right. They would be entirely too noisy if I turned them on.
Yeah, excellent.
Yes, yes.
Excellent.
Well, okay, so they're real servers, but not actually executing or running servers. But okay, that's okay.
Yeah. So Don, I'm a Star Wars guy, but I have a very healthy respect for Star Trek as well.
As you should.
My wife is currently
Absolutely.
running through her favorite series of Star Trek,
Which is?
Voyager. Go figure, female
Interesting.
captain. She's,
Oh, Gilligan's Island in space.
It is Gilligan's Island in space.
She likes it. I pick my battles. Doesn't matter. Had sex, right?
Well, and you get to 7 of 9 is not hard to look
rest
at.
my
I have to admit,
case.
Jerry Ryan is not.
Jerry
I
Ryan,
rest my case. Now, that also said, and the Borg, some really epic stuff with the Borg as well. My 9-year-old daughter has also very much taken an interest into Star Trek because of my wife's involvement or my wife's love for Voyager. And Voyager came out with, in her college years, so it was something that she sort of was growing up with type of thing. So
There's another one coming out this year.
Oh, really?
there's also another
Yes.
Star Wars movie coming
Star
out
Trek
this year.
Discovery. I'm totally looking for. Okay, I think Jeff's in the same camp as me. I'm completely a Trekkie. I think Don is as well, by the sounds of things. So I'm looking forward to it.
Kind of got me wanting to go back and watch Deep Space Nine again. I
Absolutely.
never fully appreciated
Absolutely.
that. I kind of always
It
thought
was
it was
my
a weird
favorite one.
Yep.
But please tell me you've binge watched the original series.
Oh, yeah, I've
I
watched
grew up
it.
watching the original series and wasn't the biggest fan of the Next Generation, but DS9, that was the one that resonated with me.
Did anybody pick up on Enterprise though? Did anyone pick up Star Trek Enterprise?
Yes.
That was a pretty good series too.
I really
was just
enjoyed
okay.
Enterprise,
Oh,
but it
boy.
was way too short, and I think Scott Bakula. I don't know. I'm sold.
I think it was.
Did you
I
get
think
my
it was.
reference?
Look there.
Look there. Oh, very nice.
Oh, wow. We have totally dove off the cliff.
We
into
have.
Trek.
Hey, Don, have you answered 5 questions with Security Weekly before?
We did it, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
we did it before. Okay.
Yeah, he did.
They weren't the greatest.
I've
answers,
got
but
a-
they
I've
were
got a
answers
cool
Well,
nonetheless.
now that you've had chance to think about it.
Yeah. No, we won't do
No.
it again. One and done.
All right.
I wonder
Already.
if Don
She said.
could quickly expound on the difference, the way he was articulating between awareness and training. But that intrigued me.
Oh, now we're back on the real topic now.
Wow.
Yeah, we're back on the real
yeah.
topic. Sorry.
I can touch on that certainly. Training a lot of times is built around a certification. It's built around a test. Like you need to memorize these things, and then go take this test and show that you memorize those things. It doesn't necessarily show that you understand the topic, that you can properly apply the topic, that you even give a crap about the topic, because most of the time we don't, right? Awareness is really just kind of understanding what you need to be doing, understanding what's going on around you, like situational awareness. What exactly is the flow of your data across the network and what risks you're exposed to? When we talk about defense in depth, what is my depth? Where are the points where I could be implementing security? Not that I necessarily need to, but where could I if I wanted to? That's all stuff that's not necessarily in a textbook because it's different for every organization. So you understand your data as a business owner better than anybody outside is going to. So how we can apply those security topics to your own business, that's what I consider awareness. And a lot of people miss out on that. They don't get that piece. And yeah, they've memorized the the ISO model or the OSI model. See, I screw up the acronym. The OSI model or the 20 different encryption algorithms. Great. Well, you're only going to use one of them, so you know 20 of them. Are you properly applying it? Are you applying it to the data in the right places? Is it all being maintained properly? That's all what comes in addition to that. So it is different, in my opinion. I'm probably nitpicking words on that one, but awareness versus training, it's really two different things.
I had one, actually, last question for you, Don. I think when we were speaking last, you said something about having training for G Suite. What do you have training for that? And if so, where is it? Who's it targeted at?
So I made it myself. Well, I made it myself with my team here. I'll take full credit for that. But yeah, we have G Suite training. It's targeted towards a system administrator, and it could be a single person working for a company with 5 employees up to a team managing a much larger organization. That content scales really well. Google made their product where it scales really well like that.
How technical does it get? Is it super technical or like not super technical?
Everything is done via the web interface. So we never have to drop to like a shell or write a script or anything. I mean, the closest we do is a CSV to import a bunch of users into G Suite. Yeah. Okay. So, but everything else, it explores all the different functions that are kind of found. And it's like you said, Paul, there are a ton of options in there. And some of it's really tricky. Yeah.
And some of it's really neat. I think if you spend the time with it, I think it can really help improve the security. So yeah, I'm definitely Sam. If you're listening, I'm going to send you through that. I'm going to send you. That I've enabled to go live at the end of summer for our domain because I started using YubiKeys, and I find like it's like potato chips. Like once you get one, you're like, I really need another one because you can basically enable multiple YubiKeys to be your second factor for all of your things, so that I can have one in my pocket, right? And I can have one on my keychain, and I can have one on my bag, and then I just got to know if I lose one, I go in and I deactivate that in my account. So it's a little bit of management.
You just need to get a YubiKey for every computer you use, and you can just leave it right there by the computer. That way it's there when you need it.
You could do that, but it's actually not a bad approach. The problem is the management, though, right? Is if you lose a computer, someone steals it, or you lose that YubiKey, you got to know to go in and disable that token. And if you get too many, you can lose track very easily. I
have my one YubiKey, which is on my keychain with my car keys, because I never go anywhere without that. So I've always got that key with me. And then after that, it's my recovery key that I have to jump over to if I lose that one. So I just stick with one key.
That's what I have. I'm thinking about adding a third into the mix because inevitably, like, I'll be in my basement office working and my keys are like all the way upstairs, or I'm here in the studio doing a show and I don't have my keys on me, and I'm like, I can't log in because I don't have my keys on me. That's good.
Well, what I did for that, Paul, is I also set up the Google Authenticator as well. And so I've got that's like the YubiKey and the Google Authenticator, so I can go between them if I don't have one.
Right. Now, can you turn off the SMS in favor of Authenticator and a YubiKey?
I don't have SMS turned on. I'm talking about the actual Google Authenticator app.
Yeah, the app, right. Because mine backs up right now to SMS, which I don't like at all.
Yeah, I don't use that one.
Cool. All right, with that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and Don, are you going to stay with us for the rest of the show, or do you have to go?
I'm good either way.
Okay. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Finding Node.js next.